It was important to commemorate the end of chattel slavery, acknowledging America's original sin and bringing about celebration. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
The number of people applying for unemployment benefits rose to more than 400,000 last week. That's 37,000 more than the week before. It marks a reversal after weeks of declining applications amid signs the economy is rebounding. This is NPR. A global internet outage hit several companies today, financial institutions, airlines. A problem with a third-party IT provider is being blamed. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange and Australia's central bank were among those attacked. 20-time Grand Slam tennis champion Rafael Nadal will not play at Wimbledon this summer or compete at the Tokyo Olympics. As NPR's Frank Langfitt reports from London, Nadal says he needs to let his body recover from a series of recent competitions.
In a statement on Twitter, Nadal said his goal is to prolong his career, and there was not enough time for his body to recover from the French Open last week and then play Wimbledon at the end of this month and the Olympics, which opens in late July. The 35-year-old wrote, "It's never an easy decision to take, but after listening to my body and discussing with my team, I understand it is the right decision." Nadal is coming off a sensational French Open semifinal against Novak Djokovic last week. Nadal, who's won the tournament 13 times, won the first 2 sets but eventually lost in 5. Nadal, Djokovic, and Roger Federer are in a tight race to rack up the most men's Grand Slam singles titles. Frank Langfitt, NPR News, London.
In the Indian Ocean off the coast of Sri Lanka, a cargo ship that caught fire nearly a month ago completely sank today, raising concerns about an environmental disaster, particularly for marine life. Toxic debris from the ship's blaze is already polluting Sri Lanka's beaches. I'm Barbara Klein, NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab is committed to offering a modern approach to wealth management with personalized financial planning to meet an investor's specific needs. Learn more at schwab.com/plan.
Good afternoon. You're listening to classical music here on West Virginia Public Broadcasting. I'm Matt Jackford, your host for this afternoon, and I'm here with a couple of special guests as part of our call for performers. We have Colleen and Ben Thorburn here with us today. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Ben will be singing for us today, and Colleen will be performing on harp. And so we want to know, where are you all coming to us from?
We came here from Petersburg, Virginia, where we live, and we're glad to be back in West Virginia. We lived in the Bluefield area for about 4 years.
Absolutely, and it's good to have you all here. I mean, you all are native Appalachians, so you all know the area a little bit. Tell us about your all's day jobs. What do you all do, to keep the bills paid?
Well, I'm director of choral activities at Chowan University in North Carolina, and so I direct choral ensembles, I teach voice, and I teach music history.
And Colleen?
Yep. I teach at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. I teach harp as well as some of the musicianship classes in the core sequence for college students. So music theory and oral skills is my jam during the school year.
Great. Yeah, that's your jam. I like that. And so this past year has been a lot different. And, because of the pandemic, and for musicians, it's just been, very different, sometimes more difficult. Tell me about your all's past year and how that's affected your all's careers.
For me, it's certainly been a difficult year, not being able to do many of the things that we normally do in the same way. I've been lucky, though, that at work we've been able to continue having choral rehearsals outdoors, choral concerts outdoors, and I think one of the advantages of us being a small university is we've been able to adapt that way. But I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting back to a more normal way of doing things in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's great. I mean, I know it's been tough. I mean, Colleen, how's it affected yours?
Yeah, sure. I feel very fortunate that I was able to continue most of my teaching and that positions were not eliminated just because of the pandemic. I did have to transition to teaching harp lessons for both VCU and my private students online, as well as music theory and oral skills. So an online oral skills class was definitely a challenge, but it was I feel like I and the students learned a lot this past year too.
Yeah.
So lots of good things came out of it.
Right. Well, yeah, you can, every cloud has a silver lining there. So tell me, what sorts of gigs do y'all do, as a team here, before the pandemic, say?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah,
we've been performing together for about 10 years, most of the time that we've been married, and we've done recitals all over the state of Virginia at universities, at churches, several concerts that were sponsored by Virginia Commission for the Arts. And so we enjoy performing a variety of music, mainly English and French art songs, some spirituals, folk songs, love songs, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's get into the performance here. We have several great selection. What's our first one we have for us?
And the first set of pieces we'll perform are 5 songs by Aaron Copland from his Old American Songs. He wrote 2 sets of these songs in 1950 and 1952, originally for voice and piano, and I've adapted the piano accompaniments for harp, which has been challenging in a couple cases, but it's also been super fun. The different tunes are all drawn from American folk songs, spirituals, hymn tunes, revivalist tunes, and there's even a kid's song in here. So they're quite fun.
Great. Well, let's start with this selections from the Old American Songs by Aaron Copland. And when y'all are ready, go ahead and take it away. We have Colleen and Ben Thorburn here performing live.
Come, fathers and mothers, come, sisters and brothers, come, join us in singing the praises of Zion, the praises of Zion. Oh, fathers, don't you feel determined to meet within the walls of Zion? We'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round the walls of Zion, the walls of Zion. Come, fathers and mothers, come, sisters and brothers, come join us in singing the praises of Zion. Come, fathers and mothers, come, sisters and brothers, come, join us in singing the praises of Zion. Oh, fathers, don't you feel determined to meet within the walls of Zion? We'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round, we'll shout and go round the walls of Zion, the walls of Zion, the walls of Zion. Shall we gather by the river, where bright angels' feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God. Soon we'll reach the shining river. Soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather by the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints by the river that flows by the throne of God, that flows by the throne of God. Ching-a-ring, ching-ching, ho-a-ding-a-ding-kum lucky. Ching-a-ring, ching-ching, ho-a-ding-kum lucky. Brothers gather round, listen to this story about the promised land and the promised glory. You don't need to fear if you have no money. You don't need none there to buy you milk and honey. There you'll ride in style, coach with 4 white horses. There the evening meal has 1, 2, 3, 4 courses. Ching-a-ring, ching, ching-a-ring, ching, ho-a-ding-a-ding-kum lucky. Ching-a-ring, ching, ho-a-ding-kum lucky. Nights we all will dance to the harp and fiddle, waltz and jig and prance, cast off down the middle. When the morning come, all in grand and splendor, stand out in the sun and hear the holy thunder. Brothers, hear me out, the promised land's a-comin'. Dance and sing and shout, I hear them hops a-strummin'. Ching-a-ring, ching, ching, ching-a-ring, ching, ching, ching-a-ching, 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 ching-a-ring-a-ching, ching, ching-a-ring-a-ching, ching, ching-a-ring-a, ching-a-ring-a, ching-a-ring-a-ring, ching, 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 chop! Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. in true simplicity is gained. To bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where you ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. I bought me a cat, my cat pleased me, I fed my cat under yonder tree. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a duck, my duck pleased me, I fed my duck under yonder tree. My duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a goose, my goose pleased me, I fed my goose under yonder tree. My goose says quaw, quaw, my duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a hen, my hen pleased me, I fed my hen under yonder tree. My hen says shimmy shack, my goose says quaw, quaw, my duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a pig, my pig pleased me, I fed my pig under yonder tree. My pig says gravy, gravy, my hen says shimmy shack, my goose says quaw, quaw, my duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a cow, my cow pleased me, I fed my cow under yonder tree. My cow says baw, baw, my pig says gravy, gravy, my hen says shimmy shack, my goose says quaw, quaw, my duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a horse, my horse pleased me, I fed my horse under yonder tree. My horse says neigh, neigh, my cow says baw, baw, my pig says gravy, gravy, my hen says shimmy shack, my goose says quaw, quaw, my duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee. I bought me a wife, my wife pleased me, I fed my wife under yonder tree. My wife says honey, honey, my horse says neigh, neigh, my cow says baw, baw, my pig says gravy, gravy, my hen says shimmy shack, my goose says quaw, quaw, my duck says quack, quack. My cat says fiddle-I-fee.
That was wonderful. I loved that. That's one of my favorite songs there. That's selections from Old American Songs by Aaron Copeland. And we heard a performance live here by Ben Thorburn singing bass baritone with Colleen Potter Thorburn playing on the harp. And we heard Zion's Walls, At the River, Chingering Cha, Simple Gifts, and then I Bought Me a Cat. And that's such an interesting little Copeland piece there. I couldn't stop smiling with all the different animal sounds going on there. And it's just really interesting because I swear that hens don't say shimmy shack, but I don't know.
I love how those are not the animal names that you learned growing up,
right.
But they give you such a personality for each of those animals.
Right. It's so interesting. I mean, cat says fiddle ID. It's just, how do you sing that song without laughing? How do you sing that song?
concentration
Yeah.
and visualizing those animals in my mind.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. And it just works so well for the harp. I mean, I'm just so impressed at how well that piece translates to harp. So, how did you come up with the idea to start taking these songs onto harp? I mean, just because harp and voice is rare to find, so you just did it yourself, or how did that come about?
Yeah, somewhat a little of both. Actually, low voice and harp is even more rare than voice and harp. So we knew that we wanted to do something with these Copland pieces probably about 10 years ago. I think these were the first songs that we performed publicly together as a duo. And of course, the slow, meditative ones, like At the River, translate great to harp, and I barely have to intervene. But with something like I Bought Me a Cat, there's lots of repeated notes and staccatos and challenging articulations, and it was more of just a fun puzzle to figure out how to damp precisely and place well. What can I eliminate? On the harp, that was in the key of F major. I actually ended up using a lot of E sharps so that I could have repeated Fs and just place F and E strings.
Right.
So that's kind of a fun
So you don't have
trick
to
using
dampen.
unharmonics that I will frequently use for repeated notes like that on the harp.
Right. And so, you're taking piano music, turning it into harp music, and making sure it translates well. I mean, I'm sure you do a lot of editing to harp parts and things like that when you're arranging. And so, what's the most interesting intricacy that there is for arranging from piano to harp? I mean, you have to avoid chromaticism and things like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think a common misconception, and I see this a lot when I work with young composers, is they're really afraid to use any pitches outside of the scale because they're like, it's going to scare the harpist. It's not going to work.
Right.
We actually have these 7 foot pedals that give us all our accidentals, and a good harpist is used to moving their feet just as much as their hands. It is, of course, something we have to work up, kind of like an athlete, so that there's this fine dance going on. And of course, tempo affects how easy or difficult something that's chromatic is. Something that's slow but chromatic might be a little more easy to work up than something very fast and chromatic.
Right.
But in general, I think some of the things that are tricky taking piano music and adapting it for harp takes into account a very different resonance. On a piano, there's a decay to each note. As soon as you basically stop pressing a key, you stop hearing something. And on the harp, it's like you've depressed the damper key on the piano, and it's just ringing, 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 ringing. So we have to work really hard to control that and to craft our phrases. And any kind of articulation that's meant to be dry, especially, is much more challenging on the harp. We have to think about where we're going to muffle strings that are ringing to bring out bass harmonies, for example, and make things sound clean. And another challenge, I think, beyond the chromaticism is the fact that we only use 4 of our fingers on each hand on harp. At least most standard harp technique is 4 fingers on each hand. We don't play with our pinky finger. Whereas pianists have all 5 fingers in both hands at their disposal. So sometimes there will be passages that you can tell were written for someone using 5 fingers. And maybe notes will have to get omitted or rearranged. To be fair, I've seen harp music written for harpists that have a lot of 5-finger figurations or 5-note figurations, and that's just mean, but people do it to us, and we make it work. But that is definitely
Wagner,
a consideration.
I'm looking at Wagner right now.
I'm actually thinking of Villa Lobos.
Okay. Yeah,
his harp concerto. There's some almost unplayable things in there.
Okay, yeah. I can imagine that's very technical, if you're not familiar with the harp, and, might be difficult to write for that. So you're generally playing maybe 4 notes at a time, or 4 notes per hand. Does that sound right?
Sure. Like the most we can play at any in a verticality in a chord is going to be 8 sounding pitches.
Gotcha.
And the hand span and how it feels under the hand is going to be a little different too.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's some good technical information there. In case you're out there trying to arrange for harp, heed those warnings, including myself, honestly. And so let's continue on our playlist here. Next, we have music by Gabrielle Fauré. And what do we have? What do we have for us?
We have 2 songs by Fauré, who wrote beautifully for the voice. The first is Clair de Lune, Moonlight. And this is a setting of a poem by Paul Verlaine. Verlaine, a symbolist poet, trying to create these dreamlike atmospheres. This is actually the same poem that inspired Claude Debussy's famous piano piece, Clair de Lune, but
Right.
Fauré and other composers also set that poem to music. So we'll begin with Clair de Lune, and we'll follow that with May, a beautiful song about the month of May. So we're just a month too late in bringing it to you.
Yeah. But it's his Opus 1, which is interesting. Very early on in his life that he wrote that back in 1869. So let's listen to Clair de Lune and May by Gabrielle Fauré, performed here by Ben Thorburn and Colleen Potter Thorburn.
Votre âme est un paysage choisi que vont charmants masques et bergamasques, jouant du luth et dansant et quasi tristes sous leur déguisement fantasque. Tout en chantant sur le mode mineur, l'amour vainqueur et la vie opportune. Ils n'ont pas l'air de croire à leur bonheur, et les chansons se mêlent au clair de lune. Au calme clair de lune, triste et beau, qui fait rêver les oiseaux dans les arbres, et sangloter d'extase les jets d'eau. Les grands jets d'eau sveltes parmi les marbres. Puisque mai tout en fleurs dans les prés nous réclame, vienne te lasse pas te mêler à ton âme. La campagne, les bois, les ombrages charmants, les lages clairs de lune au bord des flots dormants, le sentier qui finit où le chemin commence, et l'air et le printemps, et l'horizon immense, l'horizon que ce monde attache, joyeux, comme une lèvre au bas. et que le regard des pudiques étoiles qui tombent sur la terre à travers ton voile, que l'arbre pénétré de parfums et de chants, que le souffle embrasé de midi dans les champs, et l'ombre et le soleil, l'onde et la verdure, et le rayonnement de toute la nature fasse épanouir comme une double fleur la beauté sur ton front et l'amour dans ton cœur.
Wonderful performance there of music by Gabriel Fauré. We heard his Claire de Lune, Opus 46, number 2, and then we heard May, his Opus 1, number 2, that he wrote back in 1869, performed here live by Ben Thorburn, singing bass baritone, and Colleen Potter Thorburn on the harp, and they're here with us right now and playing for us live as part of our call for performers. So that leads me to ask, how did you all find out about this, and what led you to that?
Sure. So as Ben mentioned earlier, we lived in Bluefield, actually on the Virginia side, but really only a mile from West Virginia,
Right.
For 4 years. Maybe about 5 or so years ago is when we moved to Petersburg. But we were still in touch regularly with friends that we made during our time in Bluefield. And one of our friends sent us the call for performers with WVPB last fall, and was like, hey, I was thinking of you, especially because she knows we like to perform things like those Copeland old American songs, and things that are really crowd pleasers, and just anyone can appreciate those. They're just great for all audiences.
Yeah.
So we decided to submit some recordings we had just to see what would happen, and
Right.
we're thankful to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was blown away by your all's submission, and I'm very blown away by your all's performance today. So it's great to have you all on, and I've just been very lucky to, and fortunate to have such talent submit to this call for performance. It's been great to hear from all sorts of places throughout Appalachia and beyond. So we're very grateful to have you on, and we have some more great music coming up here in just a moment, but we're going to take just a short break, and we'll get back to the music here in just a moment.
And fate has no mercy down in the mountain.
This is Larry Gross. This week's Mountain Stage features the John Jorgensen Quintet, Bill Kirchen, Fred Eaglesmith, Charlie McCoy, and Dierks Bentley with the Travelin' McCouries.
Hey, this is Dierks Bentley. Join me this week in live performance on Mountain Stage.
From NPR, National Public Radio.
Listen this Saturday at 6 or Sunday at noon right here on West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The pandemic continues to inspire more people to go outside. One result, they have found more baby animals.
This week on Inside Appalachia, we'll hear how everyday folks helped rescue a record number of baby owls.
And orphan bear cubs. Listen to Inside Appalachia every Sunday morning at 7 and again Sunday evening at 6, right here on West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Lawyer Colette Pichon Battle loved growing up on the Louisiana Bayou, and now it needs her help.
I'm a climate activist now. Not a title I would have given myself, not a title I would have preferred, but I'll take it, whatever works.
I'm Manoush Zomorodi. Ideas about protecting water. That's next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR.
We're back here live with Colleen and Ben Thorburn, performing live here in our studios at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. And so tell us what selection y'all have for us next.
We have two songs. Both of them were written on the occasion of weddings, which is why we're performing them as a set. The first is by Marcel Grandgeny, entitled O Bien-Aimé, which means O Beloved, also based on poetry by Paul Verlaine. Grandgeny was a harpist as well as a composer, so this is the only piece we're performing today that we know for a fact fits idiomatically on the harp.
Yeah.
And even so, it is one of the more challenging songs on our program for me. Because he was a harpist, he knew he could demand a lot of a harpist.
Right, that's like a
with
Paganini.
idiomatic patterns, but still very challenging harmonies. There's lots of chromaticism in this, but in a beautiful way. What's interesting about Grandgeny is he's in my teaching lineage. He came from France in the 1920s, settled in the United States, and became a prominent teacher as well as composer. Headed up the harp department at the Juilliard School circa 1950s, and was also instrumental in starting the American Harp Society, which is a huge network of harpists now in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in my teaching lineage as well, which
is
is
awesome.
nice. So I come from that more French side of the technical school.
Gotcha.
In terms of my harp technique. And so he wrote this for one of his harp students in 1955 as a wedding gift, and I'm not sure how performed it was during either of their lifetimes. They have both passed away by now. But my undergraduate harp professor, Ann Young, at the University of Illinois, helped revive and republish this song as part of an anniversary celebration for the American Harp Society. And I believe that was in the mid-2000s. So that was how I came across this, hearing her perform it with a bassoonist.
Oh, okay.
And then when Ben and I started performing together, we're like, we absolutely have to include this because this is actually for harp and low voice, and it's by a harpist. So then that brings us to the next one by Dominic Diorio, who is
also for harp.
Which is also written for harp, not by a harpist, but at least it was written intentionally for low voice and harp.
Yeah.
So yet another thing we did not have to personally arrange, which is always nice.
Yeah.
Dominic Diorio is well known in the American choral world now. He's an associate professor at the at Indiana University, and we both went to school with him for graduate school at the Yale School of Music, or rather, I was at the Yale School of Music. Ben was in the Department of Music. That's a triviality. Yale is its own environment.
Gotcha,
for sure.
gotcha, right.
But anyway, Dominic was a good friend from my school days there, and he wrote this piece for us for our wedding in 2009. So there we have it, 2 wedding pieces written for harpists for their weddings.
And this one's written for you specifically, right?
And it was written specifically for us as a gift.
That's awesome. So that's
so
great.
we are honored to have that as part of our repertoire.
All right, well, let's take it away. We got 2 pieces here actually written for low voice and harp, and performing here, Ben and Colleen Thorburn, live in our studios.
La lune blanche luit dans les bois. De chaque branche part une voix sous la ramée. Oh, bien-aimé. Et ton reflète profond miroir, la silhouette du sol noir, où le vent pleure. cendres du firmament que l'astre irise. C'est l'air exquise. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. Follow, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear upon the earth. The time of singing of birds is come.
Beautiful music, guys. That was wonderful. We heard two pieces written for harp and voice performed here live by Benjamin and Colleen Thorburn. And we heard Marcel Grangini's O Bien Aimé, and we heard Dominic Diorio's Rise Up My Love. And both were amazing works there, and really glad you shared that with us today. So I really appreciate that. The Grangini has a lot of whole tone scales. It reminds me of something that Debussy would write, and how to see you all, see you manage the pedaling on that was very inspiring, because that's a tough thing to do. So tell me about the whole tone scales and how that lays on the harp for you.
Sure. Well, of course, Grangini was a product of the Paris Conservatory. So when he was a student, Debussy was still living, and a lot of composers of his generation coming out of the Paris Conservatory wrote in ways that evoked Debussy. So it's pretty normal to find some of that in his pieces for harp, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, the whole tone scale is great on harp because there's only 6 notes to the octave. So there's more possibilities for enharmonic pedaling, setting some strings, like D sharp and E flat, for example,
Right.
sound the same, and I can have the pedals set that way. And there's no specific set pedaling for different whole tone scales, but it's malleable, which gives us more choices to make it more idiomatic for us.
Right. That's like playing a diminished chord too. You can do the same sort
Exactly.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. And I love the Diorio piece too, Rise Up My Love. And I know you said he's not a harpist, but a lot of those runs looked like they laid pretty well on the harp. I mean, going up and down 4 strings at a time.
Absolutely.
So-
And Dominic has a very good concept of using the harp's resonance to his advantage with all of the bass notes, especially that just
Yeah.
ring, the stratification of ringing harmonies, getting progressively more quick in the top layers of the texture.
Yeah, right. And that was great. So, and Ben, singing in French, I mean, do you, have you studied French, or, I mean, do you just, as a singer, how do you go to the different languages like that?
French is one of my favorite languages to sing in, and I began studying French at a very young age. I think it was around 1st or 2nd grade in an after-school program, and I wasn't, not to say that I studied it continuously since then, but on and off. I even remember my mother teaching me a little bit of French at home when I was a kid. So it's a beautiful language and beautiful to sing in.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite language at all, or do you just like what you get?
Either French or German.
Yeah.
2 very different languages, but wonderful musically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of songs in German, lieder, opera, all sorts of stuff. So I can see both of those. Great music there, written for harp and voice specifically, and including a piece that was written for you guys. Appreciate that and your all's performance here in our studios. And you'll have 2 more selections left to go. And these are pieces by Undine Smith Moore. So tell me about that. So tell me about this composer, and then tell me about the songs we're going to hear.
Yeah, we'll close off the program with 2 spiritual arrangements by Undine Smith Moore. And she was a composer who taught for many years at Virginia State University in Petersburg, Virginia. So there's a local connection to the city that we live in. And Undine Smith Moore was known not only as a composer, but as an advocate for African American music. And so we're delighted to present 2 of her spiritual arrangements. Is There Anybody Here That Loves My Jesus? And Come Down Angels, Trouble the Water.
All right, performed here live with Colleen and Ben Thorburn.
Is there anybody here that loves my Jesus? Anybody here that loves my Lord? I want to know, do you love my Jesus? I want to know, do you love my Lord? Is there anybody here anybody here that loves my Lord? I want to know, do you love my Jesus? I want to know, do you love my Lord? Although you see me going along slow, I have my trials here below. This world's a wilderness of woe, so let us all to glory go. Is there anybody here that loves my Jesus? Anybody here that loves my Lord? I want to know, do you love my Jesus? I want to know, do you love my Lord? Is there anybody here? Is there anybody here? I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. Do you love my Lord? Come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Let God's saints come in. Oh, come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Let God's saints come in. I love to shout, I love to sing, let God's saints come in. I love to praise my heavenly King, let God's saints come in. Oh, come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Let God's saints come in. I think I hear the sinner say, let God's saints come in. My Savior taught me how to pray, let God's saints come in. Oh, come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Come down, angels, trouble the water. Let God's saints come in. Down, 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 trouble the water. Let God's saints come in.
Great job, guys. That was so good. And I love the little chromatic thing at the end there coming down. That was music by Undine Smith Moore. Is There Anybody Here Who Loves My Jesus from 1981. And then Come Down Angels, Trouble the Water from 1978. And that was performed here live by Ben Thorburn and Colleen Potter Thorburn, and you guys did a great job. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Any upcoming performances coming up here that you want to talk about, or anything like that, or just to say thanks or something?
We're so grateful for you having us today, and we are looking forward to getting back into live performances this fall. But it's been a pleasure to be on the radio here.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Colleen and Ben Thorburn, thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And so we have 1A coming up next here on WVPB Charleston, WVBY Beckley, WVPL Bluefield, WVPW Buchanan, WVWV Huntington, WVP Martinsburg, WVKM Matewan, WVPM Morgantown, WVPG Parkersburg, WVDS Petersburg, WVWS Webster Springs, WVMP Wheeling.
It fueled the industrial and